Okay, it has started recording. So let's see. Let's go to question one. So we'll do everything, even up until main, because it seems like you guys have an issue of generating the main class. So I'll do question one up until the main. So I'm going to go to the problem statement and just get a bit of understanding for the problem, what the problem is about. So the company Flowmart is designing a system to process and store information about its foods, right? So this is just a system that stores information about its food. So this could be the barcode, the quality, this could be the expiry date and things like that, things of that nature. So food is an abstract class that stores the barcode string, 8 characters long. And it is a quality of type string. Excuse me. The food barcode consists of 4 uppercase letters, followed by 2 digits, followed by 2 uppercase letters. This information right here will be important when you get to regular expressions. But for now, we'll just read continuously. So there are 2 kinds of food, canned food and frozen food. Canned food is of type weight, and then frozen food is of type temperature, right? Let me see. Will I need um let me see. Did you guys get okay, I think question one you have to create everything from scratch, right? So you have the food class, eat that class, canned food, store class. Okay, that's fine. So question one, we're just gonna have to create everything from scratch. So that's fine. So let's create the project, right? So let me go to Eclipse and say new project, new Java project. Question 1, 2023, ST2, semester test 2. And make sure not to select the create module info.java file. This part, don't select this. See here, don't select that. If you select that, you your your project is gonna have issues. So I advise you not to do that. So let's create the project again and make sure don't select the bottom part and then give it a name, question 1, 2023. And let me just call it semester test 2, question 1, 2023. And then I'm gonna click next, and then there's nothing else that I want to add here. I'm just gonna click finish. So there's our class. And then if I go, let me close Chrome. Do I need, okay, I can close the file explorer. So there's our practical. So let's see, Flowmart is designing, blah, blah, blah. So we need to have a food class. That's the first class we need to have. I think if you scroll down, yeah, there isn't more information about food. So yeah, this is the only information about food here. So food is an abstract class, right? So, okay, just give me a minute. Uh, Let me do this. If the uj slash resources slash csc. I just need notepad plus plus. So we're gonna have to create an abstract class that stores two strings, a barcode and a quality. So we'll do that just now. I just want to explain abstract classes a bit, just a bit about abstract. What makes a class abstract? That's all that I want to explain. for this before we create the class. So okay, done. Okay, there's Notepad plus plus. Zoom in. So what makes a class abstract, right? So an abstract class is basically, I'd say it's, in a way, you can say it's an incomplete class. Not necessarily incomplete because Java, I don't know, Java just does, it is a weird way of doing it. I don't know if, I've never seen it in C++, but the way Java works is that abstract classes, it doesn't necessarily need to have an abstract method in order for the class to be abstract. So the way Java, so let me rephrase that. So Java, the way it views an abstract class is basically, an abstract class is basically a class that we can say it can either, let me just say, it can either be not changed, meaning that the class is read only, or the class has an abstract method. So these are the only, okay, it could be that, or it could also, there's three ways, or class, the classes, so, or let me see, or instances of the class cannot be instantiated. Meaning, if they cannot be instantiated, it means that the constructor is protected or private. So if the constructor is protected or private, that means the class cannot be, in Java, you have to make it abstract. So if the constructor is private or protected, it means that the class cannot be instantiated. Any objects or any instances of the class cannot be instantiated or cannot be created. Or the class as an abstract method. If it is an abstract method, we would say that the class is incomplete. Or another term for it would say the class is abstract. So when the class has an abstract method, we can either say the class is incomplete, meaning that there's missing code. You can imagine remember a class is a blueprint, it's a template, right? A class is a template or a blueprint. Architects will then create the plan or the blueprint or the class. Well, these terms are interchangeable. You can say it's a class, you can say it's a template, you can say it's a blueprint, you can say it's a plan. In whatever way makes it easier for you to understand. So the class is basically a template, a blueprint, and a plan to build the object. So we're still planning. That's where the architects are involved. They plan, they say, okay, the house is gonna have so many floors, it's gonna have air conditioning, it's gonna have showers, it's gonna have bathtubs, it's gonna have in all those things that they could have. It's gonna be painted, the interior is gonna be painted pink for the pink enthusiasts out there. So yeah, that's the plan, right? And then the object itself, we call that an instance, an instance of the class. Basically, it's in a in another way, I would say it's a manifestation of the plan. It's a manifestation of the plan. So basically, the plan has manifested in itself into reality. So basically, this is the actual house that you're planning to build. So this is the house that you're planning to build, or that car that they were planning to build. Whatever thing you're planning to build, that we call that an object or an instance. They're interchangeable. You can say it's an object or an instance, right? So just get the terminology right. So we have this abstract class This is what an abstract class is. And remember, a class is a blueprint or a template. So an abstract class, abstract meaning that it's abstract, right? It's either it cannot be changed, meaning that the class is read only. What do I mean by when I say it cannot be changed? So this part, when I say a class, let me do this. Let me put it in bullet form. So what do I mean when I say a class cannot be changed? It means that the class has, come on, the class has no mutators. It means the class has no mutators, meaning that the class is read only. It can be read only. It cannot be changed. It cannot be mutated, meaning that there's no mutators. It cannot be changed. So when you see a class that's built in that way, it means that the class has to be abstract. And one thing about making a class abstract, right? By default, for whatever reason you're making the the class abstract, for whatever reason you're making it abstract, the class cannot be instantiated. So the class cannot be instantiated. Remember, instantiation is basically you creating a variable of which the data type is the name of the class and then space the name of the object and then semicolon. This would be what you call an instance, right? So basically what Java is saying, and then remember it's an object, you have to say new, followed by the name of the class, like this, and then followed by open parentheses, by round parentheses. So this is what we call an instance, right? So you cannot, basically when you say a class cannot be instantiated, it will mean you cannot create an object and use the keyword new. You cannot create an instance. You cannot write this following code. That's what it means. So by default, when you make the class abstract, you cannot create the instance. Let's just keep that in mind. I hope there's a bit of clarity on what an abstract class is. So before we start, right, we need to understand which packages to place these classes. So I'm gonna scroll down here and say, the data classes, right, must be placed in. So basically, data classes, basically all those classes that have data, that deal with data, that interact with any data, or that is data. Let me just say the classes that have data, right? They have data, meaning they have instance variables or variables within the class, right? They all will be placed within that package. So I'm gonna scroll back up there and then go to Eclipse and then go into my source folder. And remember the main, in order for your main to run right with the batch file, make sure you don't create a main and place it in a package. Or else your batch file is not going to compile. And then if it doesn't compile with your batch file, it's going to be kept. I think it's going to be kept at 40 if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, make sure so what I suggest is, but before you create any packages, before you do anything, just click on the create a new class and then call it main. We start with the main class and don't specify the package here at the top. Don't write any package there. We want it to be placed inside the default package. And then make sure you include the main function and then you click finish. And then there's the main class. Then now we can create our other things, the other classes. So there's two ways to go about creating this class within that package. The first method is to say new, and then you scroll down and you click the class option. And then here on top of package, that package name you've copied, paste it there, like that. And then go here to the name field or the name part, and then go to the problem statement and look at what the name should be. This class should be called food. And then I'm gonna call it food. And then you don't select anything because there's no, you could, I don't advise doing it, but you could, remember they say the class is abstract. You could also click the keyword abstract here so that it knows that this class is abstract and then you click finish. You could do that. But I like to write everything. I want to build muscle memory, so I have to type everything. So I'm just gonna unselect it and click finish. And then there we go. There's our class. And then we'll get to the abstract and all the other details. For now, we need to just create the instance variable. So they say that this is an abstract class that stores a bar code, which is a string. So I'm going to go to my class. Let me just minimize that. I'm going to go to my class, and then I'm going to create a string. And then they said it's going to be the barcode, right? So barcode like this, right? But don't leave it like this, because if you leave it like this, the access modifier would be of type package. If you leave it like that, the access modifier would be package, which is this package here. So yeah, I don't advise you doing that, because remember, the whole point of creating a class is so that the users don't have, one of the reasons, it's one of the reasons, so that the users don't have direct access to the method, to data, right? They access, we can restrict, we can tell the user, okay, they have access to read or they have access to write. It can either be a read only or write only or both. You can read and write. So that in order for you to do that, you'd have to make all your variables private. So you're gonna have to make them private. So I'm gonna remove this comment, and then I'm gonna make it private, put the private keyword there to say that this is a private variable. And then quality, which is a string. So I'll also make the quality variable type string quality. Then there we go. And then that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. They didn't talk about yeah, that's pretty much, they didn't talk about many things, right? They didn't, you see, the important part, right, is if they had said, remember the abstract, there's sort of like three reasons or three ways to enforce the class to be abstract. You can have a class that has variables, right? It only has accessors and no mutators. Therefore, you'd have to make the class abstract, because it means that it cannot be changed, meaning that it's abstract, right? It means like it's like a read-only class. And then we have the class has an abstract method. If it has an abstract method, it means that the class is incomplete. Basically, it means that there's missing code. So therefore, if there's missing code, then the class should be made abstract to tell the computer that, okay, since it's abstract, enforce the users of this class to not be able to create an instance, to not be able to build this object, because the plan is incomplete. So imagine you had a plan to build a house, and that plan was missing it was missing the measurements of building the windows, or the type of windows to build and things like that. That means we won't be able to build a house because there's missing information. So to tell the computer that we aren't able to build this object or instantiate the object, we should use the keyword abstract. So that's when it is that abstract method, it is missing information. Also, instances also, yeah, the construct, I should have made it vice versa. But this is another scenario is when the constructor is protected of private. Remember, when you use the keyword new, you are calling the constructor of that class. If you've made it private and public, and it's called by something that doesn't have access to it. For example, if you've made it protected, that means it can only be instantiated by its child classes or its subclasses. But if you made it private, it means that it was also a problem, because it means that it cannot be instantiated at all. It can only be instantiated within the class itself, which makes no sense. So basically, you'd make it abstract. So these are one of the three reasons. So let's read continuous, because there needs to be something that forces us to make this food class abstract. They're saying it's an abstract class that stores blah blah blah. Okay, yeah, I think if you read continuously, you understand why they made it abstract. There are two types or two kinds of foods. Basically, two types, which means inheritance. We have canned food, frozen food. I'm looking for the information that's going to force me to make this class abstract. So E diet type is an enumeration with the values, blah, blah, blah. Finally, the class is used to store foods, right? Store has a list of foods and operations to add or retrieve instances of food to or from the list, right? And then your flow mart has provided a text file to process. Each file contains the data of blah, 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 canned food, this and that, temperature. I want to see if inside the food class there's going to be, there isn't, I don't see anything that's forcing us to make the food class abstract. I don't see it. Yeah, I don't see it, but we will make it, but I just wanted to find out where is this thing. Let's scroll down, let's see. Food class abstract attributes operations. Mm, okay. So for you guys that didn't, they just said just make it abstract. We won't we won't tell you there's an abstract method or something like that. They won't tell you just make it abstract. That's all you have to do. So since there's nothing, no extra information that I'm being asked to provide, I'm just gonna make it abstract because they want it to be abstract, remember? And then I'm gonna create a constructor, right? So since this class is abstract, it means that I cannot instantiate. I cannot instantiate this object, right? So since I can't create an instance of this object, there's no need for me to make the constructor public, right? Because no one's going to have access to this class, or no one's going to be able to call this constructor here, whether it's a parameterless or parameterized, whatever constructor it is, no other class except for my subclasses will be able to call it. So since that's the case, I might as well just make the constructor protected and just genuinely force the computer to say, okay, only my child classes have the ability to instantiate it. But we really won't instantiate it. I could also just make it private. Yeah, I could just make it private, but I want to make it protected because remember, I need to call my superclasses constructor when when I'm implementing my subclasses or child classes. I need to call this constructor. So for now, we'll stick to protected. And then the constructor will take in a string barcode and a string quality, right? And then there we go. And then I'm just gonna write some extra information here. I'm gonna take the information from the question. So they said this is a barcode. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna copy from there to there. I just want my Java doc to have some substance. So I'm gonna remove the string because I mean the user can already tell it's a string. And then here it's just I'm just gonna say the quality of the food. There's nothing more to say there. And then there's a very important thing that I want you guys to master. I hope you guys watch the other videos that I made, the introduction into Java, blah blah blah, all those other videos. Java by default, every class that you create, it inherits it inherently inherits from the object class. So basically it's like an implicit inheritance, right? So just always remember this, every object, or let me not say every, it could be object, whatever class let me just say every class you create, if it does not inherit from another class, then by default, it inherits from the object class, right? And it inherits from the object class because Java uses object oriented programming, right? Remember, everything in Java is viewed as an object. Even the main function needs to be placed within a class. If you check our main.java, it's within a class. So it makes sense that the ancestor for all the objects should be object class. The object class, you can view it as like the founding ancestor of all its descendants. So in this case, the class, any class, if you don't extend or inherit from another class, by default, it inherits from the object class. So if there's no extends keyword there, it means that it inherits from the object class. And to show you that it does, let me try creating a new class. You see, I hope you've noticed this thing. Look at the superclass by default. It's the what? The object class. So that's how Java works. So I just wanted to say that so that you get to understand what's really going on. So another thing, right, about objects in Java. Every constructor, right? Every constructor, every class is constructor. Let me just say every class is constructor um invokes its invokes or calls its super classes constructor before initializing any instance variables, right? Remember, instance variables is it's just variables within the class. And those variables, just know they have to be non-static. It's just know if a variable is within the class and it's not a static variable, then we call that an instance variable. It's called an instance variable because it depends on the instance in order for it to exist, right? So that means you need to instantiate the class before you can use the variable. So that means you have if you in order to use the variable, you must create an instance of that class. So therefore, this is what are called instance variables. So this should be in your slides. You can just check in your slides for more details, but this is the explanation you'll find in there. So since what I'm saying, remember what I'm writing there. I said every object or every class inside, let me just say every class in Java, by default, the constructor that you've implemented is gonna call the its superclass. Whether remember, even if it doesn't have by default, it's gonna have it's gonna inherit from the object class. So therefore, you can just say that every class in Java it inherits from another class, whether implicitly or explicitly. So what I'm saying is when I say that it's gonna call this its superclass constructor before initializing everything, this is what I mean. So let me initialize my instance variables to the parameters that are being passed by the user. So what it means is before it executes these two lines, before it's gonna come here and call its superclasses constructor. In this case, it's an object. It's gonna call the object the object classes constructor since this class doesn't inherit from another class. If it inherited from another class, it would call that superclasses constructor. In this case, it's only gonna call the object classes constructor. In this case, it's gonna be a parameterless one. So remember, if you have super like this the calls the super classes constructor, right? And then if you use super and followed by a dot, and then let's say you called the clone function to make a clone, whatever. So what this would do, this calls a method. It could be a method or a variable of your superclass or your base class. So just know those differences. And then if you use this keyword, right, followed by brackets like this, it could be a open brackets, empty brackets, or it could be parameterized like this, quality, whatever. What this means, it means that you're calling this class's constructor, meaning that maybe we had two constructors, right? Maybe I also had another. Remember here, we're going to make them protected. Let's say I had this parameter less constructor. So this parameter less constructor, I could call it like this. I would say, I would do this. Save. Okay, there's an error on this line. Come on, save. Okay, let me just make it public. Why is it complaining? Must be the first statement in the constructor. Okay. Um, so it wants me to place it as a first statement, but that's besides the point. So what happens is you call what happens is you call what happens is you call your constructors first before you initialize, right? This could be the constructor within that class, or it could be the constructor of your superclass. Those are the first statement that should be executed within that construct. And to call an instance within an instance variable of that class, you'd use this followed by a dot. This is going to access this class's variables. That's what it means. If you look down here, let me just delete this. If you look down here, I said this dot barcode, which is this class's barcode. There it is. It's there. So just know those subtle differences between super and this. So by default, it's gonna call the super classes constructor, and you call it using the super keyword followed by two round brackets, an opening round bracket and a closing round bracket. So I will explicitly call it myself, but just even if you don't call it, it's still gonna call it by default there before it does anything else. So we have our constructor there. I'm gonna go to my question. Okay, I think we're done with the question. All I need is to, what is this? Generate accessors and getters, right? Accessors and mutators. So since this class is not, they didn't say that it should be read only. They didn't specify. I will add both mutators and accessors. If they had said it should be read only, then I would only add accessors. So let me go to source. You right click and then you go to source, and be careful of the way you are right clicking. If you if you if this thing that's flickering, it's flickering there on this line, it's gonna paste the thing that you wanna add on that line. We wanna add our accessors and mutators and at the bottom after the constructor. So I'm gonna put my line there, and then right click, and then click on source, and then scroll down to generate getters and setters. Then you select all your variables. In this case, I only have two, and then I'm gonna click generate, and then boom. I have my getters and setters. There's the get barcode, there's the set barcode, there's the return quality, set quality. And then now all I have to do is just generate JavaDoc for them. So all I'm gonna do is just do this and then just say returns the barcode. And then here, I'm gonna say this is, okay, yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's gonna waste time, this thing of JavaDoc. You don't even need to write fancy JavaDoc, just write some comments. Returns the quality. And then this sets the quality. But then this has a variable, a parameter, so I'll have to do it like this. And then press enter. And then yeah, just leave it like that. So there we go. We have our class, right? And then I think this should be everything. Yeah, we just need that. I just needed getters and setters. You're already pretty familiar with that, so I'm not gonna type that from scratch. It's gonna waste time. So we have two different kinds or two different types or kinds of food. This means that there's inheritance involved. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create the classes, and remember they should be placed within that package. So I'm gonna say new. So I'm done with the food class. So I'm gonna say new and then new class. And then okay, you see here, if you just say new and say new class, it's gonna place that class within the default package. That's not what we want. So you must go through your package explorer and click and select that package that you're supposed to place your classes in. Right click and then say new and then class. And then look at the top. It specifies the package that we are actually adding the class to. And then I'm gonna write the name there, canned food. And then to make you won't have time to write everything from scratch. So I just suggest you use the tools that are there. Me, I don't want to use the tools because I want to build muscle memory. So superclass, you see this part that says superclass. It means it's telling you what is this classes that you, what is this class's super class that you're creating? You are creating this class called canned food. What is its superclass or its base class? So you click browse here to browse it. And then it's already selected. Remember what I said, every class by default, it inherits from the object class. So by default, it's gonna have object class. It's gonna refer to the object class. Us, we don't wanna inherit from the object class. We wanna inherit from the food class. So just type food and please be careful. Be careful with checking the package name because some classes that you create, they are similar to some classes inside the JavaFX library. So you might be adding JavaFX and you think you're adding your classes. Don't make that huge mistake. Your code is gonna crash dismally and no one's gonna come to save you. Because yeah, those lecturers, they're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to help you. You are supposed to go prepare and study and practice and do all of those things. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your degree and not their degree. So just keep that in mind. No one's going to save you if you make that mistake. You need to make sure you look. That's why I genuinely just like typing the code because you can make such things can cause you to to easily get a zero. And it's not like you don't know what you're doing, you know it, but you made a huge mistake and you don't know what mistake you made. That's when it becomes a serious problem. So let me just cancel it. Let me do this. Let me not use this feature. A lot of errors are gonna surface up if you use this method. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna leave it as normal by default. It's gonna inherit from the object. Leave it like that, no extra things, and then I click finish. Right? And then let me add the other class. And then I'm gonna go to my called frozen food. So frozen food, right? And then click finish. And then now we can start to we can start adding the inheritance, right? So I'm gonna go there after the class name, and then don't type it immediately after the name because now it's gonna be like part of the name. Don't also make that a stupid mistake. Put a space there. Press tab, put a space, and then type extends. That's how you inherit. So it extends what? The food class. So why is it? Oh, it wants me to have a construct. Yeah, we'll build the construct. It's moaning because it wants me to build the construct. We'll build the construct. So it extends keywords. It means it extends this class. So this is my superclass. This would be my subclass. So this is my parent. This is my child class. So the child extends from the parent class. So it takes whatever the parent has and it extends it. It adds onto it and it adds its own unique traits. So that's how you're supposed to view it. The keyword extends, it actually makes a lot of sense when it comes to inheritance. And then we'll get to the constructor. It's moaning at me because I didn't add the constructor. We'll add the constructor. So we need to store the weight, which is a double, right? So we need to store the weight, which is a double. So I'm going to come here and remember to make it private, and then double, and then weight, right? And then I'm going to create the constructor because there's nothing else to add here. I don't know. Did I see? Yeah, I didn't see a function here. Yeah, so there's no extra thing to add. The only thing that I would suggest you add is a toString, but we always add it in the child classes. Don't add it in the base class. You could, but genuinely, I just don't advise it. So just add it to the child classes because you will use the child classes. So let's create the constructor. So we want it public because the child classes are not abstract. You see, we can instantiate them. So public meaning it has public access, just like a public transport, right? All of us have access to get inside a bus, to get inside a taxi because that's public transportation. The same thing applies here. If I make the constructor public, it means everyone has access to it, whether we are in the same package or we are not, whether we are not related, whatever the case is, you have access. So public means everyone has access. So public followed by the name of the class of which you call it canned food. So the way it works, right? The way I'm gonna suggest you do it, right, is you're gonna go when you create when you create any constructor of the child class, the office, the constructor of a child class, whenever you're creating it, go to its superclass, copy all the parameters that is the superclass is supposed to take, and then paste it there in that order. But then remember the canned food class extends food. So we need to add the weight variable also to the constructor. So comma double weight, right? And then we would now before you see why I was explaining that very important concept that every time you create a class, it always gonna refer. It's always the first line of code that should be there. It's the line that refers to its superclass's constructor. So here we are inheriting. So now it becomes very important to add that first line of code that we added inside of our food class, this one. So I'm gonna say super, put the brackets there, and you see it stops moaning at me because now it's seeing this super keyword that, oh, now you are listening, now you understand how Java works, that the first statement should be you referring to or calling the constructor of its superclass. So remember, there's no parameterless constructor. Remember, if it's like this, I'm referring to the parameterless constructor. If I go to my superclass, which is the food class, do you see a parameterless constructor? Nope. There's no parameterless constructor. The only constructor that I see is a constructor that takes in two strings, of which the first string is a barcode and the second is quality. So that we need to pass those two strings. So I'm gonna say barcode, comma, quality, and then boom, magic, all your problems solved. That's what happens when you actually know what you're doing. So know what you're doing. And for those out there watching this video and you are fast forwarding and skipping this important information, it seems like you have a tendency of liking to repeat modules. You'll watch my videos again next year for the same module if you don't watch the full recording, because this is very important. This line, like you see right now, if I comment out this line, no matter what I do, this code is not gonna run. So you need to understand what you're doing. So it's very important to also watch the whole recording so that you get it might look very long, but it's very long for a reason because there's a lot of details involved. There's a lot of substance in the video. So after calling the superclasses constructor, you're gonna initialize the instance variables of this class, of which or in this case it's only one, it's weight. So I'm gonna say this dot weight is equals to this weight that I'm getting from the user. So I'm gonna say weight and then done. So we are done creating the constructor. Now let me see. Yeah, they didn't talk about, yeah, we are still on canned food. So there's nothing more to add to canned food. So now all I have to do is just do this. So I won't input, write all the code just to save time. So I'm gonna right click, click on source, scroll down, and then click generate getters and setters. Select the instance variables that I want to get generate setters for, of which in this case it's only one, which is weight. And then I'm gonna click generate. And then I'm gonna click what is this, add Java doc, and then just say it returns weight. I won't add any special Java doc. I'm just gonna add general Java doc. And then I'm gonna need a string at some point. I know I'm gonna need a string representation of this object. So after adding this, after the last function that I've added, I'm gonna right click and say source and then click generate toString and then generate the toString. And then I should also include the inherited methods, right? Basically it means also include the base class. So the base class, but I don't need all of this, right? So you should also be careful with what you're doing. You could just write it on your own, but just for the sake of saving time, but just be careful. The only three things you're not gonna need here, right, is the get class, the hash code, and the toString. We only need the barcode and quality. And the way we can get those two things is by calling the methods or the accessors within the class, since the instance variables are private. Remember, if you go to food class, barcode is private, but quality is private. So we cannot call or reference those variables without calling a method. And that method, we call it an accessor. And then I just click generate. And then there's my toString. There's a toString, it's been generated, done. And then I'm done with this class. I do the same thing for my frozen class. We go to frozen food, we do the exact same thing. But if you look at frozen food class, we have an E diet type. So we have an enum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the enum first before I create the variables within the class. So I'm going to go to my package, click on it and then select it and then right click and then click new and then click enum. We are adding an enum. So I'm going to click enum, paste that name that I've copied, which is ediet type, and then you're going to have to make it public. Make sure it's public. Just don't play around with things and trying to be fancy. Don't try to be Jason Statham. This is not acting. This is the real life. You mess up all your code, nothing will work, and you won't know why. Don't touch things you don't know what they do. Just put the name for the enum, done, and then click finish. Don't be selecting many things. It's a friendly warning. Trust me, it's not gonna end well if you select many things there. So we're gonna need to an data type is an enumeration with the values vegetarian, lacto-free, meat, vegan, right? Simple. Save time. Remember, you don't have time. Some of you type very slow, so you don't have time. Copy paste. So I'm gonna select, okay, since it doesn't allow me to select, let me select from this side. Select everything, Control C to select everything, and then come here and then paste. And remember, everything is separated by a comma, not a semicolon. So replace all the commas, semicolons with commas, and then comma, and then Control S. And one important thing, right? Always, you see this button here, save all. Always select that button to save all, because what happens is if you don't save all and you try to reference, you call a method or to use an enum, whatever, and you didn't save, it's gonna think it doesn't exist. That's Eclipse for you. It will think whatever you're trying to code does not exist and it's gonna crash, and you won't know why. So continuously save, or you can just run. Okay, it needs me to select. Let me select main and then run as Java application. So you can also continuously run. When you run, it's gonna save all. But I suggest you become friends with this button, save all, which is Control Shift S if you want to use the keyboard shortcut. So with the e-diet type, we are done. So I'm gonna remove it. So let's look at frozen food. Let's go back to frozen food now. Frozen food takes in two things: temperature, which is an integer, and an e-diet type. So remember, we need to make our instance variables private. So e-diet, and I don't want to type the full name. I'm just going to say e-die, and then I'm going to press Control Backspace. Control Backspace is going to activate the auto completion technique. And then you remember what I was talking about, right? Look at these two things. It might happen coincidentally. It might happen that you are the same name of your enum or class or function, whatever that thing is, or variable. It's similar to the name of some function within JavaFX, whatever. You see, there's something inside swing, but just in this scenario, it's easier to depict which one is which because they're different. In some cases, it's the exact same name. You have to look at the package, axc.csc28.supermodel.supermarket.model. That's the one I'm looking for, and then double click on it so that it auto completes for me. Because you don't have time to be typing everything. You might even forget the spelling. So I suggest you also use autocomplete. And then I'm gonna say I'm gonna call it type. Let's keep it simple, type. Okay, let me not make it too generic. So diet type. Let's declare it like that. Remember, your variables should have meaning. They should be clear and they should be easy to understand. We should also create the temperature. So private int temperature. And then there we go. And remember, we need to inherit from that class, right? Don't forget this class is a type of a type of a food, right? Is a kind of a food. So I need to say extends the food class. And then it wants me to have a constructor who add that. Let's see if there's any extra thing that we need to add. Finally, store class is used to store. Okay, yeah, we don't have. That's the only thing inside frozen food. So now I can create my constructor. So public, I'm gonna use the name of the class, which is frozen food, and then done. And remember the first parameters, right, of your constructor, they need to match and they need to be in the exact same order as your superclass. I suggest you make them in that. It's not a necessity to do it like that, but it makes things easier. You won't mix up things. So I'm gonna say string barcode. Let me show you what I mean. So let's say I didn't put it in that order. I started with quality instead. And then I said string barcode. And then it's also gonna take an int temperature and an diet type diet type, right? It's gonna take in these four things, right? And then remember, look at this order. I started with this quality followed by barcode. And then now remember the first statement of every constructor is you're calling the superclasses constructor. So let me call my superclasses constructor using the super keyword. So super, and imagine you made this mistake, right? You wrote it, you didn't listen to what I said, then you wrote it in whatever order. And you passed it in that order that you wrote it in your child classes constructor. And then you say barcode. And then your code is gonna crash dismally because of a small issue that you did. Because now what's gonna happen, you remember you're calling superclass, right? Let's go to our superclass. So that means barcode is gonna be initialized to quality, and then quality is gonna be initialized to barcode. So be careful. I suggest you pass it in the exact same order. So that's why I usually just go to my base class or superclass to copy that order, those parameters. And then that's the first thing I add those are the first parameters that I add for my child classes or subclasses construct like this. And then I'm gonna say barcode and then quality. This is the order that I should pass it in. And then I create a generate Java doc. And then that's pretty much it. And then I'm gonna need to generate three things, accessors, mutators, and the toString function. So let's start with getters and setters, right? Select um, the instance variables of your class, which is the data type and the temperature, and then click generate. And then after clicking generate, you need to add Java doc for each method. So here I'm just gonna say it returns diet type. You don't need to have like fancy Java doc. Just add any Java doc so that you get this. I think it's 5 marks for Java doc. So returns temperature. And then this is the temperature. And then once I'm done, after the last method, right, I'm gonna select any empty space before this curly brace, because this curly brace, right, it matches with my classes where my class starts. So this means that this curly brace indicates the end of the class. So if by maybe by some weird, I don't know what could be going on, but you just decided to do something very spiritual and you started typing after that curly brace, your code is going to crash because now you're outside the class. So be careful. So I'm going to add there before this closing curly brace, right click and then click source and then click generate toString. And then remember to also be careful with the way you're selecting. So we're going to select our inherited methods, right? Because this is a subclass. So I want to also add my superclasses instance variable, my superclasses instance variables to my output or to as part of the toString so that when I generate output, it has everything. So I'm going to unselect get class and unselect hashcode and unselect toString. And then just click generate. And then we are done with all of our classes. So now we getting to okay, there's the last one, the store class. So store is used to store foods, right? So store has a list of foods. So also be careful not to use be careful with with following instructions. They said list. They didn't say array lists. They said list. Don't we'll get to that, but don't overthink it. Yeah, don't think about it too much. So this is gonna be store, right? And then finish, and then minimize, and then there's the store. So they say the store has a. So I'm gonna remember always make it private. It has a list of foods, right? And then I'm gonna call it foods like this. It has a list of foods. There we go. They said list of foods. If they wanted an array list, they could have said an array list. And they said it should create operations to add or retrieve instances, right? So basically, what do they mean? They mean you should create an accessor and a getter and a setter for this array list. That's all they mean. That's all they're saying there. So you could just generate it. You could just right click and then click generate, and then after generate, click no, what am I saying? I'm gonna right click, right, and then click source and then click generate getters and setters. So before we do that, let me create a parameterless constructor, right? So public store, because if I don't, do you know why I'm doing so? Because I want to instantiate this. If I don't instantiate this, it's not gonna run. It's my code is gonna crash. Because remember, list, this is a capital letter. Remember, anything that starts with the capital letter is the name of a class. Look at store, starts with a capital letter. Look at main, starts with a capital letter. So I know list is a class, but it's not really a class, an interface. Yeah, I think it's an interface. Let me do this. Yeah, it's an interface. So list is an interface, but remember interfaces are treated like classes. They're like they're like sort of like they're similar to abstract classes. So I'm gonna create a constructor called store, and then it's always the first statement is call my superclasses constructor. In this case, I don't have an extends here. So that means the superclasses constructor that's being called is a parameterless one, which is inside the object class. And if you hover, the super keyword is going to show you java.language.object. So it's calling the object parameterless constructor. And there's the Java doc. It constructs a new object. So we have this, and then now I'm going to say this dot foods is equals to new array list. I'm gonna let me see. I hope this works. But then the difference between a list and an array list is that a list is immutable, meaning that it cannot be changed. Remember, a list is an interface. So remember, interfaces, it only contains methods, not implementation. So you can't mutate the list. If you check here, look at the methods. We have a boolean that's called contains. We have a function that returns an iterator. We have an array, right? Remember, a list is basically an array that gets resized every time we run out of space. So that's why it looks like it's never reaching its maximum. It does reach its maximum. So we have an add method. Let me see. Let me not initialize it to a list. Let's do something. Add all, add, um, remove all, retain all, replace all. So these are all the methods. There's also the sort method to sort it. We have the get to get it returns a value, which is of type 3, type E, whatever that type is. Remember, it's a generic interface. We have add at a specific, you can add at a specific index, remove at a specific index. We have all of these methods, right? And okay, some are implemented, but they use the default keyword to say that this is the default. There's no the classes that implement this are not gonna won't implement this get first function. It already has its default code. So yeah, this is the classes. But okay, let's do this. Let me delete this line. Let's leave it like this. Let me try something. Let me see if it's going to give me problems. I'm expecting it to give me problems, but let's see. So we need to create an access and a get and a setter for this array list, this list, not array list, it's a list. So I'm gonna say public, is public. Let's create a getter first. We should return a list of foods, right? So copy, paste, and then I'm gonna call it get foods. And then I'm gonna say return this dot foods, right? It just returns the foods. And then just returns the foods. I don't think that foods is a plural. I think, but yeah, let's not get into those details. I think it's just food, but yeah, let's not get into those details. So public void set food. Let me just say set foods. So to set the food, it takes in a let me see. What did they say exactly? And operations to add or retrieve instances. So be careful of understanding the question. They said instances. So we need to retrieve the whole array list and be able to add a whole list of instances. So yeah, be careful. So it's very it's a very tricky if you don't understand the instructions. So it means we're gonna take in a list of food, right? Which are foods, right? There we go. And then let me do this. And then I'm just gonna say this list of foods, right? And then I'm gonna say, so in order to add another list, right? You know, things like lists, arrays, array list, blah, 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 all those things, they're called collections, right? They represent what we call collections or a collection of values. So we're gonna use the function called add all inside the list interface. Let me open it. Inside the list interface is an add all. Let's scroll down. I think I saw it. You see the add one, right? The add one won't work because the add one only adds one instance, not all instances. All right. So let's be careful with those terms. So add, remove, and then add all, you see. So it's any collection, right? So it's any collection, and remember this, what this means, it means that whatever value being passed, whatever object, whatever type, whatever list is being called, this should be a part of a collection or the collection class. And it should this type that you're gonna pass for that object, it should be it should extend the the previously defined type for that list. So we have add all. I'm gonna use this one, add all. It should be able to add. Let's see. I hope it doesn't give me any issues. So I'm gonna have foods. Let me say this dot foods dot add all, and then takes in foods, right? Okay. So far, so good. No issues, right? So be careful. They said to add instances, to retrieve instances. If they said an instance, they could have but let me see, it makes no sense also. I don't know how they want you to structure it, but it also makes no sense. But it's fine. That's what they said in the question. They said instances, plural, not instance. If they had said instance, right, this is how you're going to structure it. They're only saying one thing at a time. So this will just return a food and we'll take in some index here, right? And then here it will also just be food, right? And then instead of calling add all, we just call add, right? But in this case, we need to add the whole list. That's the requirement. So let me see what does this class also have? The store class. Okay, that's all the store class needs to have. There's nothing else. So FlowMart has provided text files to process. Okay, now we're getting to the really annoying part. Regular expressions. Each file contains data for multiple. Be careful of terms, ne? I suggest you highlight. You're gonna have a laptop. And it also uses these features you can highlight. You'll be using Adobe, I think it's Adobe Acrobat Reader. So it also can highlight. So highlight so that you're aware and you're aware of what the actual requirements are of the practical. So for multiple canned food or frozen food instances, let's highlight and we don't want to make any mistake. We want to make sure that we understand. Each file contains data for multiple canned food or frozen food instances. So, how do we distinguish between the two? We're going to use a pattern. We're going to use a regular expression for that. So let's see. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit parched now, but let's continue. We have food barcode. So this is the barcode of the food. So they also want to test if you guys can really follow instructions. They did talk about barcode above. If you go up, they do explain. You see, they explain what are the requirements of the barcode. So let me open your favorite website. But I'm actually being sarcastic. I know it's not your favorite website. I know you guys, you feel like every time you come here, you're abused. So let's check it out. Let's see. Okay, at least it's um, the next tab. So it's four uppercase letters followed by two digits. So let's see. Four uppercase letters, right? How do you represent uppercase letters? Square brackets, and you put uppercase letter A, and then say A to Z. And then this returns exactly one uppercase character, right? If I come here and I say type one uppercase character, see it matches. But the moment I provide more, it's not gonna, it's actually matching one at a time. If you look at it carefully, it's matching one at a time. It's not matching the whole thing. So if you want to increase or quantify, we call them quantifiers. If you want to quantify and specify exactly how many, you need to add a quantifier or a value. You can use quantifiers or a value, whatever you want to use, however, whatever approach you want to use. So they say here, there's only one way you can write it. They say four uppercase letters, right? It means it's exactly four. How do you represent exactly? It's curly braces, and you only put one number within the curly braces. So this will be four. One number meaning exactly four. If they said four or more, it would be something like this, four comma, which means four to infinity, right? You don't put anything because there's no character to represent the infinite. So usually leave it empty. But in our case, it's exactly four. So I'm gonna put four there. If they had said maybe 1 to 4, you'd say 1, 4, which means it's minimum, exactly minimum one, and the maximum exactly four. So yeah, there's different ways. Or you can just say from negative infinity, any number, it could be none, one, up until four. Not necessarily negative infinity. Let me just say from this technically is 0 to 4. Technically, yeah, it's technically 0 to 4. So there's many ways to write it. But then in this question, they just want you to say the exact number, which is exactly 4, followed by exactly 2 digits. So digits is anything in the range between 0 and 9, right? Or you can abbreviate it and say slash D. I usually use slash D. What's going on? Okay, let me try to fix something here. Something's wrong with my keyboard. Um, where's the keyboard settings here? Windows 11, man. Hey, let me just quickly. Mm, okay, I just hope this should be fine now. Typing, right? Let me scroll down here. Let me select. Let me fix this. Let me scroll down again. Select that. See formatted changes. Okay. So let me do this, right? Mm, Let me just quickly do this. Let me exit and then open it again. I just hope now now this keyboard works the way I want it to work. Okay, paste there. Let me see now. Damn, it's still doing the same thing. Wait, how come it's not showing this thing, man? Let me see. Just give me a sec. I'm trying to fix this keyboard. Why is it doing this now? Advanced keyboard settings. Hmm. Okay, this is not it. Da, 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 da. How come it's not showing though? It should be somewhere here. Okay, that's not it. Installed apps, blah, blah, blah. Settings. It's not showing. But this is where the typing and whatnot is. Okay, let me just click here. Then next. Hmm. Where's that one? Typing, language and region. No, this is not, that's not it. Where is it? Let's see now if it's going to. Hmm. It's almost, okay, let me. Okay, let me open it again. I think it should be fine now. Yeah, now it's fine. Yeah. Sorry about that. Let me do this unpin. So let's continue where we left up. So I will use \d, right? You can use that range and say 0 to 9. You can do that. It's perfectly fine. It's correct. And then followed by 2 digits and followed by 2 uppercase letters, right? Followed by another set of exactly 2 uppercase letters, right? So I'm going to use curly braces, and then within the curly braces, I provide one number, right? So that's the information. And then remember, we are still dealing with canned food, right? So this is how it's going to be written in the file. And remember, also another important information is each element is separated by a tab character. So those pieces of information are important. By the tab, they mean this space here. If you zoom in a bit here, you should see a space between E and F. That's a tab. So it's fine. We'll write it now. So we are done referring to the food barcode. So now if you look at the file, after the food barcode is what? There's this space here, and that space is a tab. They said it's separated by a tab character. So I'm gonna go back to my program. There's two ways you can write it. You can say tab like this, \t. \t is an escape character, an escape sequence for a tab, or basically it represents a tab. Or you can just say \s, which is any white space character, one or more. And then white space characters, remember white space characters, it's one of these. It's this, or just a space, or a new line character. All of this, it's any of this, one or more, any of those. So I could also write it like this and just say \s plus, like that. And then if we look at the next thing is the food quality. The food quality, they didn't specify. Let's go up. The food quality, yeah, they didn't specify. They just said it's a string, right? So if we look at, let's investigate what the food quality could be. Let's go to, okay, I actually don't have the files right now. Let me see. Do I have the data folder? This is the 2023 one, right? Yeah, I think I'll need the data folder. Um, okay, let me just quickly get the data folder. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for now. Let me quickly get the data folder. Uh, Data folder. So web. Let me quickly get the data folder. Just give me a sec. I'm getting the data folder. Uh, Data. folder. Okay. And then let me log in. And then, yeah. I think what was it? Okay, I see it now. So I just need this. Okay, now I'm gonna share my screen again. Okay, so let's go. Let me open the provided the provided files. I need to add the data folder to my file. I totally forgot to add it. So question one, I need to add the question one. So under source, it should be empty because you must create everything from scratch. But the two things that I'm gonna need is the batch file, which is this, and the data folder. So I'm gonna copy these two folders, select my project that I'm running, and then Control V to paste. And then let's look at any of the files, right? So if you look at the files, right? Okay, this should be a canned food because we see three values, right? And then this is the other one. There's canned and what? And frozen. So this is the frozen one. And we can see by negative values. If you did physics, you'd understand what temperatures would represent, what degrees, whatever you want to call it, what that represents something that's frozen. It's below what value. So you see it's negative values here. So we have this canned food and then frozen food. So we are still a canned food, right? So this space is here, right? Let me undo. This space is here, they represent a tab. Or we can just say it's a white space character in your regular expression. You can say a tab or a white space character in your regular expression, followed by some string. If you look at the strings, right, these strings also include digits. There's a number, the first class. This one doesn't exclude, this one includes, this one also includes smaller characters and all those things. So all I'm just gonna say is it's just any character, right? Including digits. How do we specify that? You say backslash W plus, saying one or more. What does backslash W mean? It means it's a characters A, uppercase letters A to Z, uppercase letters, smaller letters, smaller lowercase letters A to Z, digit and the digit and that underscore, like this. This is what we call all those characters that we're talking about that represent the string. But I'm just going to shorten it and just say backslash W like that. And then after that name, remember there's a space now. If you go to the file, let's go to the file. After the name, that class, there's a space, which is a tab. If you remember what they said in the question paper, each thing is separated by a tab. You can say backslash T or backslash S plus. Come on. And then I'm gonna go to my question paper. What's what follows what comes after is the weight. It's which is the double. So since it's a double, how would you say it's a double? How would you represent a double in a regular expression? Simple. You just say it's a digit which is 0 to 9, one or more, because they didn't specify exactly how many digits before the comma and after the comma. They didn't specify. So it's any number. Remember the plus. The plus basically means this. It's like saying 1 to infinity. That's what the plus means. So I'm just going to say plus because you expect at least a digit, or at least one digit, followed by a dot. And the dot, you can just write it as it is, or you can just put it inside square brackets like this. It's up to you in whatever way you feel comfortable in. And then this can also just be abbreviated to just backslash D. I can do that. So you're gonna have a digit in front of the comma, followed by a comma or a dot. And then after the dot, you're gonna have another digit. But then it's not one digit, it's one or more. So I need to add the plus there. And then we can also test it out. I can copy a few lines. Let me copy the first 2 lines just to test it out. Uh, we I think I know why it's complaining. Let me see. Did I get everything right? It's the dot, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, everything is fine. So I think it's complaining because it wants me to use tabs instead of saying it's a white space character. So let's change the white space character. Let's remove the backslash s plus. Every backslash s plus replace it with the tab. So backslash t and then backslash come on, right here backslash t. Let's see now. Okay, still, so that's not the issue. Why is this thing not matching? The regular expression is fine. It's any uppercase characters, for exactly 4, right? And then, oh, I see now. Yeah, I think I made a mistake with the digit. Let's check here. Yeah, I forgot to write. They said followed by 2 digits. Me, I just said backslash D, which is 1 digit. So I was supposed to put a 2 here, like that. Now it matches. That was the small issue that I left out. But also with backslash S, it should match. Yeah, it still should match. So I'm just gonna leave it like this. So we have the regular expression for canned food. So this would be the regular expression for canned food. So I'm gonna come here and just say canned food regex, right? I'm gonna need it later. That's why I'm saving it here. And then frozen food regex, right? There we go. And then, yeah, let's get to frozen food, right? So I'm gonna go to my file and I'm gonna copy frozen food. There's not a lot of frozen food there. I'll just copy 1 line. If that matches, I'm just gonna, okay, with my regular expression, right? If you want it to be strict, right? Like you don't want it to include any white space characters. What do I mean by white space? So for example, you wanted a regular expression that's matches this four letters, right? Let's say food. It shouldn't match if you add all those spaces after it. You can enforce it to do that. How do you do that? Or you can just it's not it won't match, but I'm just saying to be very strict, right? How do you tell it which starting point and which stopping point? You put a $sign at the end of your regular expression to say stop there. It's like a full stop. And then here you put this character here that's like a cap to say this is where it starts. So it means it starts exactly here, and then it's followed by words, and then it stops exactly there. It stops at exactly after D. You shouldn't have any white space characters after it. You shouldn't have any of those white space characters. So I can make it strict, the regular expression like that. This is the most correct one to write it like this. So let's go to frozen food. So frozen food, um, yeah, there's the frozen food. And remember, each element is separated by a tab. That's very important. So it's the same as previous, barcode and food quality. Remember the barcode, it starts with 4 uppercase characters, right? A to Z, exactly 4. And then followed by exactly 2 digits. And then followed by, is it uppercase characters? Two of them, yeah. 2 uppercase letters or characters. 2 uppercase, that means A to Z, exactly 2, like this, right? And then remember, each element is separated by a tab. You can write it like this, \t. In this example, I'm just going to use a \t in the second regular expression so that it's a bit unique. You see the two ways of doing it. So I'm going to use the \t here. I'm literally going to use the tab. And then it's followed by some string. And remember what we said. We said just going to say W \W plus, meaning uppercase characters, lowercase characters, also include numbers 0 to 9, also in underscore. And if you see this string, it also has a number, right? So \W, it's fine. It means a word character. So now we need to get to the diet, right? So the diet is an e-diet type, right? And remember, an e-diet type, it has a list of values. It can be one of those values. So I need to open my interface or my enum, I mean, and then copy all these values because it can be one of these values. It can either be vegetarian, lacto-free, meat, vegan. If I look at my text file, there it is. There's vegetarian there, there's vegan, then there's lacto-free. Where's lacto-free? There's lacto-free. So it's any of those. So I need to go there and then come here. And then to specify it's any of the range, to sort of like put it in a neat way, I could just write it like this, right? And then remember to say or, you use this pipe, this we call that pipeline or pipeline, whatever. This thing that looks like a one, but it's bigger than a one on your keyboard, is there on your keyboard. So you write it like this, right? But then if you write it like this, right, it becomes very confusing for the computer to understand. If your regular expression is like this, you have to put round brackets to say it's one of this thing within the round brackets. So if you look at my regular expression, you see, now it has changed. They said, oh, it's one of these things because I added the round brackets. So the round brackets are very important. And remember, each information is separated by a tab before I forget. Remember the e-diet type, right? You see, we start after the food quality, there should be a tab. There's a space there. So let's go after food quality, which is this one, \W, there should be a tab. So I forgot to put a tab there. So \W, \T, which is a tab. And then any of the information representing a, what is it called? The e-diet type. This is the information. And then after the e-diet type, remember, we need to also have another tab. And then after the tab, there's an integer which represents the temperature, right? Yeah, so that's the last thing, and then we are done. So the last thing is an integer \d. Could be one or more, it could be an integer. And okay, yeah, there's something very important here. If you look at your file, right? And remember temperature here, the temperature here, it's negative, right? It's storing negative because it's frozen food. So I need to say that before the number, there should be that minus sign because it's a negative number. So before the \d, after the tab, I need to say minus like that. To make it more better and more readable, I can put it inside square brackets and say square brackets minus sign there. And then I can just put the, what is it doing now? I can just put that cap there at the beginning to say it stops there. And then that $sign at the end to say it stops there. It starts there, it stops there. And then I just click copy to copy the regular expression and then paste it here. So there's the regular expression. We've tested it with one of the inputs, so I'm sure it's going to work. So we are done with our regular expression. So now the reading part, all the other things should be easier to do now. Let me put on battery saver, increase the brightness. Battery saver, there we go. So we are done. Now it's time to read the files, right? So in order to read the files, we need to create a class called the file handler to handle the file or to read the file. So I need to create the file handler, and remember the file handler is inside its own package. So the food file handler class must be placed in the axi.supermarket.file. So copy, and then let me create the class. So let me close these files and this and close store, and then go up there. Okay, not up. Okay, it's fine. New, and then class. And then I also specify the package name because it needs to be inside a specific package. The name is food file handler, right? And then click finish. And then it's placed within that package. So if I look at the functions that I must have, I need to have a read store. So if I scroll up, we need to have a function called restore, and this is where they explain here in the instructions section. And you must use the appropriate regular expressions. So since we're going to use regular expressions, right, I'm going to create constances, right, for my regular expression. I'm going to create patterns. So I'm going to make it private, and then I'm going to make it of type pattern, and then I'm going to call it canned pattern, like this. And then import. And then to initialize a pattern, you need to call the static method inside the pattern class. It's called compile. Dot compile. And then within there, you pass a string that represents the regular expression. And then private, we create pattern. This is frozen. Pattern is equals to pattern dot compile. And then that string there. So there's our constants, right? So now all I need to do is copy the regular expressions. For canned food is this one, copy. So you see why I was saving it inside Notepad++. Copy, and then I'm gonna need to copy the second one. Copy, and then paste. And then this is everything that we need so far. Okay, remember that these patterns, right? We're not gonna change them, right? So there's just a pattern for that specific canned class, that specific for a pattern for that specific frozen class. They're not gonna be changed. So I'll make them final, meaning that they are constants. So they cannot be changed. So I'm gonna make them final. Let's look at this class. What did they say? Yeah, it should be a static read store. So since remember, if you did look at your slides, static member variables, right, or anything that's static, it means that it's shared. So imagine you and your friends, or your siblings, whatever, person who's closest to your heart. Let's say, for example, maybe you wear the same size, right? So you wear the same size and you want to go shopping. You go shopping, you want to buy hoodies, right? And you wear the same size. And then you happen to find a hoodie that both of you guys like. So when you see that hoodie, what's going to happen is instead of you guys spending money separately to buy your own version or your own hoodie, we would call that different instances, right? Of the hoodie class. So you're gonna have your own hoodie, which is your own copy, and then your friend's gonna have their own hoodie, which is their own copy, their own instance. Each person has their own instance or their own object or their own hoodie, or whatever way you want to phrase it. Let's say you decide to save money. You're like, you know what? No, man, show me. Let's not buy two of the same hoodies. We are the same. We both look the same. We are the same. We have the same build and everything, and we always share clothes. So why not, instead of getting two hoodies, why don't we have one hoodie? So we're sharing the hoodie. So when you're sharing the hoodie like that, we now call that aesthetic object, aesthetic variable, aesthetic function, meaning that it's shared. Meaning that you don't need to, in programming terms, it means that you don't need to create an instance in order to call that thing, in order to use that thing, because it's not part of each instance. Remember, each instance is not getting its own copy, it's shared. So it's actually another term for it, they call it a class variable. because it's part of the class, it's not part of any instance. It's shared amongst you guys, which is the objects. So, and another, since it's shared and things like that, what happens is that anything that's static, right? Let's say it's a static method, right? A static method cannot call anything that's not static. That's the rule. Because remember, it's static, right? That means it doesn't have access to instance. Remember, if I leave it like this is what we call an instance variable, an instance constants, right? Meaning that it depends, each instance is going to have their own copy. So if I try to call this inside an not an instance, inside this instance variable inside a static method, it's going to crash. So the way static methods work, you can only call things that are static, other things that are static. If it's not static, you can't call it within that static method. But for now, I'm going to leave them like that. I won't put the static keywords. I want it to moan at me, and then I'll let you know. I'll let you know how to fix it. So it's going to be public, static. I don't know whether it should return or whatever. Let's see. It's a static read store, right? So for the return type, I'm just going to leave question mark because I haven't read that part yet. I'm writing as I read. So there's the method. Let's see. It must accept a file handle. So remember what I said, when you see file handle, it means it's a variable, it's a file, it's an instance of the file class. Me, the way I do it, I usually just copy the whole thing. So file handler, it just in a way it just means you can just copy it. So I'm just gonna copy it like that and then put it as a parameter like this, and then done. And it must return a store. Returns a store. So I'm gonna go back here, and then where there's question marks, I now know what it should return. It should return a store. And then it wants me to import the store because this class is in a different package. So I need to import and import that package, the package that it belongs to. So some of you were confused by this part where it said containing food instances to read from the file. Remember, if you go inside the store class, let's go to the store class. The store class has a list of foods, which is what? Which is what? Instances of food. So don't let that confuse you. You already have the list inside of the store. They just want you to return an instance of store which has instances of what? Of foods. But remember, the store class has an array list, has a list of foods, right? So immediately, if any instance of store is going to have a collection of or instances of foods. So don't overthink it. It just means return store. They're just reminding you that remember, store has a list of foods. So return an instance of store which contains food instances. Basically, which contains that list that you've declared within the store class. So since it's supposed to return a store, I need to create a store instance here. So I'm gonna call it store and then instantiate it to new store like this, right? And then here it's gonna return that instance store. And then, okay, remember Java doc. We need to have Java doc. And then this is the file handle, right? And then returns a store containing instances of food. And then I'm done. Let's get to the reading part, right? So the method must read each line of the file and determine if it is canned or frozen. So we're using regular expression. And then based on the expression, add to the correct class and add it to the store, right? So it actually becomes a very interesting thing, right? So what I'm gonna do, right, is okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna break it down. I'm gonna break it down, right? It's gonna look like it's gonna be very long, right? But I'm gonna break it down. Remember that there's many instances of canned food and there's many instances of frozen foods, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create array list for each. So I'm going to create an array list to store canned food. So every time I see a canned food, I add it to my array list. You could also just make it a list, it's up to you, but I'm just gonna say, yeah, I'm just gonna, let me use it. Let's use lists, right? So I'm gonna say list canned food and to say canned, just gonna represent my canned, and then this is gonna represent my frozen food, and then I'm gonna say frozen. And then I need to import because this is a different package. So I'm forced to import. If it was the same package, I wouldn't be forced to import. So let's look at it. You must read each line, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So it's not a problem. So we need to instantiate a scanner, and look at the information, something very important here. You must use automatic resource management. And you must also handle any exceptions. Basically, it means you must have a try catch. Try something and then catch the exceptions that are thrown. So let's do that. So try, and I'm using automatic resource management. So automatic resource management means that the file will be closed automatically by Java. So I'm gonna say scanner is equals to new scanner, and then it takes in the file handler because I'm scanning the file. I'm not if I was scanning the standard input stream or taking system.in. I'm not scanning that. I'm scanning the file. So it's gonna throw a file not found exception because it might not find the file. That's why it throws that exception. So I need to handle it in case it throws that exception. And then it wants me to import the scanner class, then I'm gonna import. So we have our try catch block, right? So now let's read the foods, right? So let's read the foods. So in order to read the food, I need to say while, I need to do a while loop. So while scanner dot has next line. I'm gonna read each line. I'm gonna check if it has a whole line to read. Because if you look at our text files, right? Look at our text files. It is lines that we're supposed to read. So there has next line function. It asks the question and returns true or false. It asks the question, does the file still has a next line to read? If it has, then we read the line. Before I do anything within my while loop, I'm going to create matches, right? I'm going to create matches. So matches, they help us to match some text, and they help us to match a text with a specific pattern, right? So you can imagine it's like a love matchmaking thing. If you know love matchmaking things, right? You look at if there's common attributes between the two objects, right? In this case, it's one person, which is another. It is a person, an instance of a person class, and then another person, which is an instance of person class. If you guys like the same thing, for example, you like the same movie, you like watching, like I don't know if for my sci-fi enthusiasts out there, you recently watched Dune Part 2, and then you realize, oh, both of you watched that same movie. So there's that common thing. So there's that matchmaking there. So if there's common things between the two of you, you would say that we would call that a match, right? So it's the same sort of philosophy that we're applying here. We're trying to match the pattern, which is the regular expression, and that string. In this case, it's a whole line, but it's the string. But I'm just gonna it's a line because we are reading the scanner class. There's a function called next line. That's why I'm calling it a line. But at the end of the day, it's a string. So I'm going to check if the string matches with the regular expression. So in order for me to do that, I need to create matchers to help me match those two things. So I'm going to call the first one canned matcher is equals to, and then let me import it first so it doesn't moan at me while I'm typing. So I'm gonna say is equals to, can you zoom out a bit? Is equals to the pattern that I'm trying to match, right? In this case, this is a canned matcher, so it must it must reference the canned pattern. So canned pattern dot matcher. Yeah, this is the error that I was talking about. You see, it will tell you cannot make a static reference to the non-static field canned pattern. So it's complaining, it's moaning at you because the function is it returns a static, something that's shared. So you should only call things that are static. And look at our instance variables or our constants. Are they static? No, they're not. So I would have to make it static to say that they're shared. And then I'm done. And if it's to show you that it now understands that it's static, look at how it changed the writing. It's sort of like now it's sort of like cursive now. So now it should work. You should be able to call the method. So dot matcher, it takes in some line. So what line does it take in? So the line that it must take in is a line that I must read from the user. So I'm just going to create both of the matchers before I continue. So frozen matcher is equals to frozen pattern dot matcher. And then we haven't read the line yet. We'll get to reading the line. So before we instantiate the matchers, I need to read the line. So I need to get the line, or get or read the line, however you want to phrase it. So let's read the line, right? How do we read the line? So to read the line, let me zoom out a bit. So to read the line, it's going to return a string. Like I said, it's a string. We're going to use a function called next line, which returns the line. So I'm going to call this variable line because, I mean, duh, it returns a line. So scanner dot next line, which returns a line. And this is the line we're getting from from the class, right? From the file, I mean. And then there's a function that I like to use, which is trim. So what does the trim function do, right? So the trim function, what it does, let's say, for example, you have this string, right? It has spaces, and then it's hello, and then it also has spaces like this. What the trim does, it trims, it does what is called, it trims. It removes any white space characters before the first character, and also white space characters after the last character of that line or of that string. So what's going to happen when you call the trim function is going to remove this space, these white spaces, remove all these white spaces like this, so that we have the exact string that we're looking for. So I'm going to use the trim function. So I'm going to say line and then restore it in the same variable. I'm going to say line dot trim the line, and then return and store it in the same variable. And then now, since I have the line and it's trimmed and everything is fine, I can pass the line there. I can say line, come on, line, and then pass the line there again. So yeah, there we go. So what this matcher is going to do, right? This matcher is going to check, does this person have the same traits as this person? Do they match? Are they a perfect match for each other? That's what it's going to check. And then there's a function called matches that says, oh, you guys have matched, you're a perfect match. We're going to call that function. So we're going to use an if statement, if can matcher dot matches. So you have matched with your specific with the specific potential candidate. You have matched, so dot matches. In this example, all it means this we found a canned food. That's all it means. And then here it means we found a frozen food. That's all that means. So now, since we are sure we found frozen food, remember we have this array list, right? This list, I mean, that can store canned and frozen. We're gonna use those lists to store the canned to store the canned objects and to also store the frozen object. So now, since I'm sure that this is gonna be canned object, a canned food object, I know it's gonna have three things, right? So I'm gonna use this class called string tokenize. So the string tokenize, right? String tokenizer, tokens. There we go. And then Java util. So what the string tokenizer does, right? The string tokenizer, it divides your string, the whole string, into tokens. So for example, if you have 1, 2, 3, hello, and hi, right? And then let's say this is equals, right? When you use string tokenizer here, how would you use it? Let's say this is the string, right? So this would be string. Let me just call it A is equals to this. How would you use it here? You would create a string tokenizer instance first. String tokenizer tokens. And say new string tokenizer. And then takes in the string first as the first parameter. In this case, our string is called A, the one that we want to tokenize. Tokenize means we want to split it up. That's all. We want to make it split it up into tokens or into individual strings. That's what we mean. So since we want to split it into individual strings, what's the delimiter? After here, it takes in what we call a delimiter, right? Spelling delimiter, which means what's the stopping point? When do I stop extracting this token? When I see, so I'm going to put it in a string like this. When I see this equal sign, that's when I know I've reached my the end. So it's gonna get to the equal sign and stop there. Your string won't include stopping point. Just keep that in mind. So what happens is this is how you can reference all the strings. So I'm gonna say string one. Let's say the first string is a number, and then I'm gonna say tokens dot next token, right? The next token function, what it does, it returns the string. Remember, string tokenizer, it's gonna tokenize it into strings. So each element you're getting is of type string. If you want to convert to a number, you have to cast it, all those things. But then here, in this case, I don't really care. So what's going to happen when you call the next token the first time, it's going to take the first token. So when I call this, when I use, you see after line 34, when I've used the string tokenizer, it has tokenized it in this way. I have 123, it gets to equal sign, it stops like, oh, that's the first string, and then it excludes the equal sign. It continues from where it left off after the delimiter, after the equals. So it's gonna extract hello, it sees the equal sign, it stops, and then it removes the equal sign. And then it gets to the other string, hi, which is high, it gets to equals. Okay, in this case, there's no equals after I, so it's just gonna stop there. So now we're gonna have these three strings. So you call them using the next token function, and you're gonna refer to that object that stores all of these tokens. So when you call the next token first time, what's the next token? What's the next token that's available? It's the first one, which is this one. So in a sense, you are saying this is equals to this. In a way, that's what you're doing. So it's gonna store the first token, which is 123. And then string, what's the other one? Let's say grid is equals to tokens dot next token. It's going to count how many times you've called the next token function. This is now the second time that you're calling it, right? Because you've called it previously at the first time. This is the second time. What's going to happen is going to go and look for the second available token. In this case, it's hello. So you call it, and you call it the third time, it's going to look for the third available string, which is hi, and so forth and so forth. So just keep that in mind. So we have tokens here, and then we're going to say new string tokenizer, which is going to take in the line that we've read, because that's the string we're trying to split. And remember, each value is separated by a tab, which is \t. That's how you represent a tab in coding. So that's the tab. And then there's our tokens, right? If also be careful, if you call, remember, look at this string, right? I'm expecting the maximum 3 tokens. This will be the first token, second token, this will be the third token. How do I know? Because the delimiter is the equal sign. So that means I can call the next token function a maximum of 3 times. If I call it the fourth time, it's gonna go look, it'll be like, okay, where's the string? Where's this fourth token now? I don't see it. Because now this is what's gonna be, this is how it's going to be. It's going to be like this. It's gonna look for the fourth one. It's like, I don't see the fourth one, and then it's gonna crash. It's gonna throw an exception. So be careful of how many tokens you're expecting your string tokenizer to return. So what I'm going to do, right, since I'm going to do it for both this frozen food and canned food, the string tokenizer I'll declare it outside the if outside of any if statements. So there it is there. And then I know for my canned food, I expect 3 tokens because there's the tab, there's the tab. So I expect 1, 2, 3, right? Remember, I didn't say the dot is the delimit. I didn't say that. So it's gonna stop whenever it sees a tab. Sees a tab, and then it's gonna read. Even the dot is gonna include it because it's not a stopping point. It's not the delimiter that I've defined. Read, and it reaches the end, and then it stops. So I'm expecting 3 tokens. This token, and this double, and this double. So it's 3 under canned food. So string, I'm gonna extract. What's the first string that I'm expecting? It's the barcode. Barcode, which is equals to tokens dot next token, right? And then what's the next one? It's the quality. String quality is equals to tokens dot next token. They're all strings, so I don't have to worry about casting and stuff. Now, when I get to this value, I have to, which is the weight. I think it's the weight. I have to worry about casting now because the weight is a double. Yeah, you see the weight. And then if you scroll up, they say the weight is a double. You can also check your classes. You did declare it. It's a double. So how do I cast it to a double? But let's just do it. Let's just write code here. So I'm expecting a weight, and then I say tokens dot next token, not next element, dot next token like this. It's going to have an issue here because it's failing to convert a string to a double. You have a string on the right-hand side. You have a double on the left-hand side. Remember, this is an assignment statement. This box, it only stores values of type double. It only stores doubles. And you're trying to fit into that box something that doesn't go in. So the way you go about doing it, right, you cast. How do you cast from a string to How do you cast from a string to an integer or to a number, to a numeric primitive type? How do you cast? This is how you cast. You call the wrapper class, which is the class for that primitive type. The int wrapper class is integer. The doubles wrapper class is called double. And then the float is called float. If you notice something, they all start with an uppercase letter. Just keep that in mind. You don't have to cram. Don't cram. Please don't. The coding is not something that you cram. And then for what else should I put? There's short, which is short like this, and then there's byte, which is gonna be byte like this. Then we have what's the other one? Long. It's gonna be long like this, and then yeah, these are the wrapper classes, right? Basically, the class for each primitive type. So for each of these classes, you call a function that begins with pass. Pass basically means to cast. It's another term for casting or convert, whatever. It's the same thing, but the function inside Java is called pass. So if you want to pass to a number, right, you're gonna to convert some string to a number. Let's say I have this string. String. I'm gonna call it. Let me call it str1 is equals to 32, right? To convert it to a number int a, I'd have to call the wrapper class, right? Remember, all these methods are static for converting, so I don't need to create an instance. I just refer to the name of the class, dot, followed by the static method. Remember, it begins with pass, followed by what you're passing to or what you're casting to. So pass int, meaning I'm converting to an integer. Followed inside the brackets, you pass in the string that you want to cast. Then we have double. You can just say the name of the double, the name of the class representing the double primitive type, and then you're gonna call it pass. It's called pass double, str1. You pass a string within that function, and then float. It's gonna be float. You get the point. I don't have to type everything. Pass double. So pass float. I mean, you get the point. You see the pattern now. So this is how you'd cast from a string to a number. So that's how I'm going to cast. Remember, this whole line that I've selected right now, it returns a string. Tokens.next token returns a string. So I'm gonna say, since I'm dealing with the double, I'm gonna say double dot pass double, and then within the function, the parameter that I must pass is tokens.next token, which is that string that I've read from the file, which is the last token, that double value. And then I need to create a new instance of, since I have all the pieces of information to instantiate a canned food object, I need to instantiate it. Because remember, at the end of the day, I need to add it to my list. Before I can add, I need to create the instance, because the array list stores only instances of that class. So canned food, I'm just going to call it canned, is equals to new canned food, like this, which takes in that's the thing that I like about the way they've written the files. The way you pass, if you follow what I've told you to write them in that order, look at how I'm gonna pass these values. I'm gonna pass them in the same order that I've read them from the file. So barcode, quality, weight, and then done. And then done. I'm gonna have canned. Okay, I think I already declared a variable called canned. Yeah. Let me just call it canned foods. And then this here, I'm gonna say frozen foods, right? And then since I have that instance there that I've created, I can add it to my list. So canned foods dot add canned food, which is that canned food. And then done. It wants me to initialize. Let me see. Okay, let's use an array list, because now this thing is making my life difficult. Let's just use an array. Let's just use array list, right? And then I'm gonna say new array list, like that. And then I'm gonna say new array list, like this, right? And then we are done. We are done with canned food, right? The only thing that I'm left with is frozen food, of which I know the first two things that I'm gonna read from the file is the barcode and the quality. And how do I know? They told you in the question paper. Look at frozen food format. It's first has the barcode followed by a tab followed by food quality. So I know. And then the next thing that comes is the diet and the temperature. So I need to get the diet. So the diet is diet type, right? Diet type, and then diet type is equals to. So with the diet type, right, it works in order to convert from a string to a diet type. You use the sort of the same approach as integer, the integer class, double class, the float class. So it also has some function similar to these functions, like pass float, pass double. But it's the function that you would call now inside for it to convert from a string to an enum, to convert from a string to an enum, you use the value of function, which takes in some string. And it's a static method, right? That means it's you don't need to create an instance. You just type the name of the enum dot value of. So the name of the enum is e diet type, right? Dot value of, and then it takes in a string, which is tokens dot next token. And then there we go. I've read the enum or the diet type. And then the last thing, I think it's temperature, right? Which is an integer. Temperature is equals to, and remember it's integer, so I have to cast it to an integer. So integer dot pass int function, then tokens dot next token. And then I'm gonna have, now I can instantiate a frozen food instance. So I'm gonna call it frozen, and that says, when I say it's equals to new frozen food, which takes in the barcode, followed by the quality, followed by diet type. That's why I'm very careful with the way I'm putting in the order that I'm putting my declaring my variables and stuff. It's very important. What's going on here? Okay, I think I didn't put it in the same order. Let me see. Frozen food. I think I ended with the diet type. Yeah, it ends the diet type. So I can easily change this, fix it here, and just say there's a diet type, and then it ends with the temperature instead. Like this. And then don't forget to save all. You must always save all. Control Shift S. You must always save all the information. So we go back to file handler. So now that's fine. That's fixed. That's fixed. And then I need to add it to my array list of frozen foods, right? So frozen foods dot add frozen, right? Frozen food dot add, right? So that's done. And then now before we return the store, right? Remember something, right? Let's go back to the store. Let's discuss something very important. Remember the store, we have a list of foods. We haven't initialized this array list inside of our class. So we need to initialize it. So how do we initialize it? We need to call the set foods method. That's how you set the food, and it takes in a list. And remember, array list it implements the list interface. So it's like a child class of the list interface. So I need to call the set foods interface. I need to add both of the array lists, right? Because we need to add both objects. So I need to say store dot set foods, and then I'm gonna add canned foods. Let me see. Where did I? Oh, it is there. It's fine. The method in the type store is not applicable for arguments. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, this thing is gonna give me a problem. So it wants you to use a list. So let's do this. Let me do that. It's not applicable for the why is it still moaning at me? Yeah, I said it should take in a list. That's fine. Why is it saying it's not applicable though? It's still within the function, everything is fine. Okay, let me try this. Let me not initialize it there, right? Let me see. List can change methods to set foods. List canned food. Oh, I think I see why it's complaining now. I don't know why it should be complaining, or maybe because this is an interface, it's not a class. So it's complaining because it's saying whatever food you're trying to add, it's not, it expects a food. I don't know why you can't see that this thing. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that. Like, I don't know this error. Like, it makes no sense. Because if you go inside the list interface class, right, it does say that the parameter E, this E that you pass here, whatever that parameter is, it should be we should be able to add instances of that. When you call the add function, where is it? I think it's is it the add? I think it's the add. Let me scroll down. Let me look for the add. Add. Where's the add function? Okay, that's the add. Okay, it doesn't really show the add. Where's the add? Add first, add last, add, get first, get last. Nope, 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 nope. Why is not showing the add function? We have this. Okay, E boolean contains iterator to array. We have to array, and then there's add. Oh, the type of elements in the list. Damn, these people are not playing around. So let me try something. Let me do this. What if I make it a list like this? Let me try something here. Okay, now it stops complaining. Damn. So I suggest you use this approach, right? There's this approach in programming, right? So for example, in Java. So for example, if I have the base class fruit, right, and fruit, I'm able to use the fruit name, the my base class's name to instantiate a subclass or a child class. I can say new apple. I can say new apple, right? Why is this possible? Because what's on the excuse me, what's on the right hand side is a fruit. So that's gonna work. So the same thing here, I'm gonna say canned food, right? Like this. Okay, change type to list canned food. Okay, so let's just leave it like this. But yeah, okay, no, let me not refer to that example. So if you look at list, right, and this side I have array list because array list is a list. So it's possible to do that. You don't have to always say apple is equals to apple. You don't have to always say that. You can also just say fruit, the base class is instantiated to a child class. So for now, hopefully this should work. So for now, I'm just gonna leave it like this, right? So I'm gonna initialize a list, right, of, it's fine, I'm gonna initialize a list of foods, and then, but when I add, since an array list, I should be able to add even the instances of the child class. I think so. Let me see. I think they they sort of like they make inside the class, they make it easier to understand. Let me see. To add instances of the class. Clone to array. Nope. Get set add. Okay, okay, this is the add method. Okay, it's fine. So that's fine. Yeah, and then after adding here I'm adding the canned food objects. Add canned food objects to the list. And then afterwards, I'll also add the frozen food objects to the list. So store dot set foods frozen foods. And then now it's gonna complain again. Oh, I didn't change that to type of food. And change this to type of food. So we have that, and then we are done. I think we are done with, yeah, we are done with the code. Yeah, this should be everything. Yeah, this should be everything. So now let's go to our main. Whew, this was a very long session. So let's go to our main. Let's see what do they want us to do inside main. So they say display it in any format that you want. Doesn't really matter in whatever format you want to display it. So in your Java, create a main class that will be an entry point of your program. The main class must use foot file handler read store method to read and process all the provided text file one at a time. After each file, iterate through the store list and display only the following. Display canned display only the following. Display canned food on the standard output stream in any format that you would choose, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's fine. We're gonna call the toString methods. So let's see. And they said you should read all the files, right? So there's many ways to kill a cat, right? What I'm gonna do is this. I'm gonna create a, let me see, let me create a list, right? So I'm gonna create a list of types. Let me see, of type what? Yeah, let me create a list of type store because it's gonna have it's gonna return a lot of I'm gonna be reading the classes a lot, right? And it's gonna return. Okay, yeah, I know what to do now. Yeah, I have a trick on writing this thing. So import list and then do this. So we have this, right? And then now I'm gonna create a string, an array of file names, right? File names, right? Initialize it like this. You can use this list initializer and it initialize a list or an array. So these are the files, right? And they're inside the data folder. So I'm gonna have a list of strings. So data, super, market, large dot txt, right? And then we have medium and small. So we have a lot of these files. I'm just doing it like this so that you can be able to read my code. I have a pretty small monitor. So supermarket, large dot, no, so this is medium dot txt. And then I have data / supermarket small dot txt, right? So these are the file names, right? And then I'm gonna have, okay, I'll create the file inside the for loop. So I'm gonna do it for each loop, right? For each loop, I'm gonna get a name of the file inside this array of file names, right? And then within, remember each time I call this read store function, right? It returns an instance of store. Then that instance of store, I'm gonna add it inside the stores array list or the store list. So I'm going to, before I read the file, right, I need to create a file handle, right? So create a file handle. So I'm going to call it handle. handle is equals to new file, right? And then the question is now, what name is it gonna take in? Remember, we're reading multiple files. The name is gonna take in it's all of these names inside the list, and we are referencing them one at a time and storing it in into this variable called name. So I'm gonna come here and put in the variable name here, like this. So one at a time, I'm gonna read the files. Create a file handle, read the file, and store it into the returned objects into the stores list. So now let me create, it's gonna return a store. Let me read the file, and I know it's gonna return the store, right? And I don't need to create an instance of food file handler because the method is static. It's shared. It doesn't belong to any specific instance. So therefore, I'm not forced to create an instance. I can just use the name of the class followed by the name of the static method. So food file handler dot read store, which takes in that handle, right? After reading that handle, it's stored. After reading in that file and returning that store is going to be stored inside the store variable. That store variable needs to be added to the store list. And then we are done reading from the file. So this would be read from the file with the name, which is this name, which is the name variable. That's the name of the file. It's gonna start at this file, the large file, and then it's gonna then go to the medium file, read it, return it, read the small file, and so forth. So now once we are done, I need to go to the list of all the stores and read and output, right? We've read and stored, right? So let's output. So for each store, again here inside the stores list, display, right? But then remember, let's also be careful here. We need to be very careful. So for each store, this was a bit tricky, but for each store, remember each store, it is a list. So in order for me to get the information for the list, I must go through each element in the list, each food in this example. So that means within this loop, I must have another for each loop. So for each, so I need to get the foods, right? So I'm gonna create a list here of type food, call it foods, right? Is equals to stores dot, remember we were told to create an accessor for the foods, right, inside the store class. So we need to use that. So it's equals to store dot get foods, which returns the foods, right? And then I go through each food, go through each food, whether it is canned or frozen. It doesn't matter. We won't go too much details. It's just going to go through all of the foods, right? Each time is going to return a food instance, right? Because remember, each element in the list is of type food. So food returns a food from the list foods. And then there's something very important here. If I leave it like this, right? Remember, let's go to the base class. If you look at the base class, nah, the base class only has barcode and quality. So how do we make it how do you force it to output the right information? Remember, all the subclasses have extra information. There's the keyword called instance of. It's gonna come in, it's gonna play a huge role here. Instance of is just basically you are checking that this variable that you've declared is just asking the question, is this variable that you've declared, is this variable that you have declared, is this variable declared an instance of this class? That's what you're asking. So that's how we can find out which instance we're dealing with. And then once we found the instance, we do what we call downcasting. So downcasting, it means go from the top of the inheritance hierarchy and cast it downwards. So cast it down to the subclass, because this instance is an instance of the superclass. So we need to cast it down to the subclass because the subclass, look at the subclasses, right? Let's go to, yeah, if you open the subclasses, right? Look at the subclasses. This one also has weight, and it also has the toString and all those things. There's extra information. So this information is not part of the food class, the base class. In order for us to get access to this information, we need to cast it down or convert it to be a canned food instance so that it has access to the canned food values and functions and methods and everything. So how do we do that? We say if this food variable or this food object is an instance of this class named canned food, then I know I've found a canned food instance. Here it's complaining because I didn't import. It wants me to import. That's what that question is asking. If it happens to be true, then what should I do? Create. Okay, I'm just gonna write just like this. Create a canned food instance by casting the current food instance to a canned food. So this is what we call downcasting. Downcasting. So you are moving down the inheritance hierarchy. So you started from the food class, and then you casted that food, converted it into a food. Remember, we are called casting so that we have access to methods part of the subclass. Remember, the parent class only has information about the parent or only information about common things. It doesn't have all the extra unique things of the subclasses. So we also need to cast the subclasses to we need to cast the superclasses instance to be of type of the subclass type, so that we have access to elements or functions and values part of the subclasses. So now we are done. All you have to do is just output, just say sys out and call the toString method, right? So canned dot toString. So by default, when you use system.out, you don't need to explicitly call the toString. It will implicitly call the toString for you. As long as you output an object, it calls the toString function for that object. So I can leave it like this and it still work the exact same way. And then this one, I'm going to say else if food is an instance of frozen food, right? If this variable is an instance or is an instance or it's a variable of the class named frozen food, then I know I've found a frozen food object. So I need to cast it so that it has access, that object has access to methods part of the frozen food class. And then frozen, and then sys out frozen. And then that should be it. Let's see if, okay, we're having an issue. Add all because this dot food is null. So yeah, what I'm gonna do, right? Let me do this. Let's go. I do understand what it's talking about. I didn't instantiate it, right? It makes sense. What did it say? Okay, complained there. And then after complaining there, it complained to set foods. Yeah. So it's complaining because this is not instantiated. So what I'm gonna do, right? Even though they say use list, but you should return a list, but make sure you just cast it to just instantiate it to an array list. So I'm just gonna initialize it to an array list like this, because you can't remember, you can't use an object that's not instantiated. So let's see if we can have any other errors here. Perfect. No errors at all. So this is our output. Okay, it seems like there's a lot of nulls. Oh, let me see. There's a lot of nulls because is frozen? Is it frozen food or file handler? There's a lot of nulls because if it doesn't match, that means but no, it should be fine. Let me see. Let me check the files. Yeah, this okay, I see. So what I would do, right? It's fine. What I would do is whenever it doesn't match, right? Remember, it needs to either be it can be one of the two, either a canned food or a frozen food. What I'm going to do, right? I'm going to do an else. I hope this works. I'm gonna do an else and say if it doesn't match any of them, I'm gonna say it's output an error. Okay, not this. This error, output an error and say um not a food item. And then I'm just gonna use the continue keyword. Continue just means skip, of which it's fine. I don't have to use it because I'm already at the end. You see, it's fine. So, but I don't think they should make any difference. I'll still have nulls. Yeah, I still have nulls. Yeah, you see, the some objects didn't match. So let me quickly do this. Let me put the console down. Okay, let's check. It was able to extract most majority of the info. I think it's just the file. The diet type, unless if okay, the diet type, okay, I see. So the main issue is the diet type and temperature. So let's double check the temperature. If you did something wrong, yeah, it won't work the way you expect it to work. So integer, I expect 4 tokens, right? So 1, 2, 3, and then 4, right? So let's look at the file. Let me choose a small one. So we have these files, right? So where's this thing? What's it called? The temperature. This is the frozen food class, right? Temperature and diet type. Okay. So I'm expecting an integer, which is this value integer, this one. So after the tab, so it should be separated by tabs. GMO, -20, blah, blah, blah. Should be fine. It shouldn't make any difference that I use backspaces. I don't know whether there's a fault within my. I am getting the tokens and everything. Let me see. This is a tab. That's fine. I think it has to do with my regular expression. Let me see. Let me do this. Let's replace this with a tab like this. Let's not use white space character plus. Let me just use an actual tab. Maybe that could be the issue. I'm not sure. Maybe that could be the issue. Still now. Okay, what about the temperature? Still 0. What went wrong with my reading here?
In the
You're
machine, frozen is supposed to output error, not not system out. Should be system error.
oh, okay. Uh Let me create the question paper. I didn't pay attention to those details. Details are very important. Display canned food on the standard output stream. So standard output stream, yellow, and then canned frozen food should be on the standard error stream, right? Details matter. You can lose marks. That's what prevents you from getting total. So there we go. That's fine. Now I'm only left with fixing this issue here. Okay. Always save. Okay, there's the frozen, blah, blah, blah. Not a food item. That's perfect. The question is diet type. Why is it doing that? Let me see. Mm, it's E diet type, right? And then what's E diet type? It's a vegetarian. I don't know. Let me see. I think it might not even be our fault. Let's see. Hmm, let me say medium. Okay, vegetarian. Okay, the spelling is the same. Lacto-free, spelling is the same. Meat, is there meat here? Yeah, there is. And then vegan. There's vegan. So spelling is fine. Tabs, tabs. Then how come it's not adding? Is it because I used an array list? I don't know. I don't know what's the issue now. Why is it doing that? Let's see. Store. I create an instance of store. I do that. There's the instance of store. There it is. And then we have the canned and frozen instances. And then add, right? Which is fine. And then call this to add all the foods. Okay, maybe this is the real issue. Let me do this. That's the problem. When they say use list, I don't know, something doesn't really go as planned when you use list instead of array list. An array list is just straightforward. But then the problem is now it's not gonna complain about this one, about the food class. Let me change something. We'll get back to which is that the store, not the food. Let me do this. Let me change it to an array list and see if that's gonna make a difference. Foods, right? Okay, why is all of a sudden this thing just just doing too much? But I don't think this is gonna change anything. Yeah, it's not gonna change anything. But it seems like it's fine, right? I think it's fine. The problem is just these two inputs. Let me just take it back to the way it was. Put a tab again there. And then store. Let me make it a list again. Okay, I need to import. Yeah, I don't know about that piece of data. I honestly don't know. Because if it wasn't displaying at all, why is it getting these inputs and doesn't get the other inputs? So clearly something's not right. But let me see. Maybe in my okay. Let me stop blaming people. It's my fault. Look, I didn't add the code to initialize these two variables. Yeah, my bad. So I need to say this dot diet type. So it's actually not the file problem of the file. I just forgot to put the code. So don't forget to put your to add your code. Yeah, that's coding for you. Even if you have 10 years experience or whatever the case may be, you're bound to make these mistakes. So perfect. Now we are good to go. Now you have solved your practical, and then you're gonna leave the venue happy with your 100%, and you're like, yeah, Homestay my, I'm the goat. Man. You're gonna leave there feeling like you're a big man. So that's how you should do it. And then let me show you before we the session, I end the session. Let me show you another trick here. You see here this part. You can also just I know your memo can I would I personally I don't prefer it if you're a beginner, but if you're a pro, it's fine. So you can instead of displaying it like this, you can display it like this and say and put brackets there and say start by solving this, right? Whatever when you get that when you get back that instance, you call the toString for that function for that instance that you've returned. I wouldn't prefer this method. Yeah, I genuinely don't prefer it. So just leave it like that, like the way I did. So this is how they wanted you to do it. And you see, we did use lists, even though we technically initialized it to array list, but it returns a list. That's the thing, it returns a list. You're working with a list. So basically working with the list that's pointing to an array list. So just keep that in mind, but you made use of lists. Even in your, if you check my, is it food file handler, we did make use of lists. Then, yeah, that's it for the session. I will upload the memos in the description of the video, right? And just a friendly reminder, UJ's Wi-Fi, it blocks links, right? So I'm sure you might be struggling to download some of these solutions. I suggest you download when you're at rest. If you stay on campus, that's also a problem. I don't know because I can't accommodate everyone and say everyone send me your WhatsApp numbers and then I'll forward you the solution or send me your email addresses. That's a lot of admin. You must also put in the effort. And you're already watching this video right now and you see the code. So you could also type it from scratch. Yeah, you must also put in the effort. But yeah, this is question one. This is the way I would have approached it, and we approached it the right way. I just that I didn't follow some other instructions. Just that I'll get so caught up in the coding part and sort of like forget to go back to the details of the practical. So yeah, that's it for this practical, this session.